If there was true justice in the world, of course, do you think this can stop without military intervention? Yes, it will most likely stop without military intervention. Yes, I do. Because it's if something can be stopped with one phone call, then it'll be stopped with one phone call. Because there is no military intervention without the United States. Do a 180 on Gaza right here.
You and I
on I believe this was on May 20th. Here, this is when he officially soft launch. He went from soft launching his support for Hamas to hard launching it.
Listen, you and I have talked about this war in Gaza for ever since it started. This phase of the 75-year conflict, and I have resisted going as far as you have done in your criticism of the Israeli government. I resist no more. I think we've reached common ground about what we view is happening and has been happening through this period of this blockade, which frankly is just starvation of the people there, including so many innocent young women and children. And I think that the incessant bombing and killing, and we don't know how many civilians have been killed, but it is on a daily basis. It looks like hundreds of people every day, with no apparent attempt, it seems to me, to have any real plan for how this ends or what happens when it ends, other than if you look at what Smodrich has been saying, probably the most right-wing member of a very right-wing government, he is talking in a genocidal language about kicking all the Palestinians out. So I think you and I have reached a place in the last few weeks where we are in agreement. But my question for you, Mehdi, is how does this end?
I don't know the answer to that question, Piers, and I'm glad we're in agreement. I wish we weren't. Actually, I wish I had been wrong and you were right. I wish that a year ago when I said on your show, you said, well, if it's not about the hostages, what's it about? And I said, it's about depopulating Gaza. It's about conquering Gaza. I wish I'd been wrong. But as you said, Bezalel Smotrich, the finance minister...
Yeah, I mean, I have a solution. Intifada revolution. Okay. All jokes aside, I mean, I have a solution. I think... dissolve the apartheid. Like literally, one phone call from the American administration, consistently continue applying pressure if you're outside of the administration to your politicians, to members of the media, to keep up the focus and keep up the pressure and keep up the attention to Israel's Nazi regime, to Israel's Nazi, and then get the move, or at least like if you're in Europe, you have a better opportunity to get your government to move in that direction, to decouple from Israel, to apply sanctions to Israel, pressure the European Union to apply sanctions to Israel, which then will put Europe and European leaders at odds with the American foreign policy and make America's allegiance to Israel more costly. Okay? And then eventually cause the United States of America to make that final phone call where it's like, it's done. If there was true justice in the world, of course, do you think this can stop without military intervention? Yes, it will most likely stop without military intervention. Yes, I do. Because it's if something can be stopped with one phone call, then it'll be stopped with one phone call. Because there is no military intervention without the United States go-ahead. And the United States is not going to say, go and invade a coalition of the willing, go and invade Tel Aviv. They're going to just make the phone call and get Israel to stop before that comes to fruition. It's that simple. Chinese intervention, though, dude. Okay. Chinese intervention is less likely than America invading Tel Aviv. Okay, that's how unlikely it is. Get out of here, dude. Like, God damn, I glaze China for the good things, okay? China's foreign policy against America is great, okay? They do all the right things, mostly focusing on trade, mostly focusing on development, mostly focusing on generating goodwill. But China, when it comes to directly standing in opposition to the United States in a matter that would be considered interventionist, no, they don't do shit. They don't even use interventionist policies in their own backyard in like the Philippines or whatever, when they should be doing that. China is unimaginably non-interventionist, or when they do intervene in the affairs, they usually side with the state repression. Okay? Whether it be Indonesia or Myanmar, China will always side with the repressive forces of the state, okay? Because they value stability within their neighbors more than anything else, okay? I'm not talking about like invading Vietnam, Chad. I'm talking like contemporary China, okay? And even if you were to like bring up the Korean, that's a very different time in China, in Chinese history. We're not talking about China under Mao. We're talking about China now. Okay? If you think China under Mao and China now are following the same vision, you're wrong. Okay? If Mao was alive, then yes, you would be you would be seeing a very different. Well, if he was alive, he'd be really old. But if Mao was still alive, you'd be speaking Chinese right now, okay? China really some bag chasers on my granny. Aslında Piers Morgan. This is a Turkish chatter, I think. But they are, yes, you are correct, chatter. China really be some bag chasers on my life.
In the Israeli government said this week, we are there to conquer, cleanse, and remain. Those are his words. We are disassembling Gaza, he said. We are leaving it as piles of rubble. He says we're doing something that no one's done in the world.
Do you think the U.S. will make the phone call or rather die with Israel? No, there will come a point when the phone call will be made. That's going to happen eventually. Because as I've said with Russia as well, all wars end up with treaties, okay? There will come a day when that call comes. I just wish it would have come a year ago.
Before he bragged out loud and he said, yes, the Gazans will have to leave. So all of those things are stuff some of us were saying last year. I wish we hadn't been vindicated in this horrific way. The killing is ongoing. The starvation is ongoing. And look, I do hope that a dam is bursting. You mentioned the word. Shmuel Lederman, who is an Israeli researcher, spent much of 2024 saying it's not a. He was interviewed by a Dutch newspaper last week. He said, I've changed my position. It is a. He said, in my field, there's a consensus among scholars that it's, in fact, that Dutch newspaper interviewed 7 leading scholars of every single one said, we think what's happening in Gaza is it. In fact, this week, Piers, you have an Israeli former general, Yair Golan, saying a sane country does not attack civilians, does not kill babies as a hobby, and does not expel civilian populations. That is Yair Golan, the former deputy chief of the Israeli policy. He was a hero on October the 7th.
He's so mad. Stay mad, you cannot.
Fought Hamas himself on October the 7th. This is what he said this week.
Yeah. Yair Golan is Hamas. Ehud Olmert is Hamas. Go to Gaza. Why don't you go to Gaza? If you like Hamas so much, you have become Hamas. Go to Gaza.